Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. So very glad you were joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And as always, very glad to welcome in Earl Eues back to the program. Hey, Earl, how are you?
I'm good, Keith. You didn't say my long title.
Well, sometimes I've got the breath for it and sometimes I don't. When I have to say mine, it's hard to do that. But of course, Terrebonne Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, Earl Eues.
It's good to be here, Keith. We're seeing some uptick in some of our numbers in COVID.
Right.
We saw this week we had some issues with that. We had a possibility of having some type of tropical event. So it's good to come back on and kind of give some people some information regarding those two events.
Well, and just making sure that people understand that even though our numbers are where they are, once you give that percent positivity rate.
Yeah, well, right now we had
high.
about 26.5% or 26.5%, which is high. It's higher than it's ever been.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I think the percentage is higher because of the number of people taking home kits,
Right.
home tests that don't get reported to the state. So we're finding that this new, I don't want to call it a new strain, but it's a variant of the Omicron, which is a BA.5. We're finding that it's pretty highly contagious,
Right.
easy to give to someone else,
Right.
and that's why our numbers are high. But we're also seeing the virulence of this strain not to be as making you as sick as the one that we've had 2 years ago.
Right. So the severity not nearly as bad.
That's correct.
And a lot of these symptoms we're talking about, like sinus type symptoms, cold and flu, with some people having fever, some not.
That's correct. Some are having it, some are not. It's we've been saying this for the last 2 years or more. Is if you're not feeling well, please take a home test and stay home. Till you feel better, especially if you're running fever. Just because you tested negative today, before you decide to go back to work, take another test to make sure that you are negative, because it may show up 2 or 3 days later that you're positive.
Right.
And then pay attention to your employers or the CDC's guidance on isolation and quarantining, because it's easily spread amongst the population, and we're seeing that in our numbers.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of our facilities are listing us as red, being in the red, which means there's a lot more social distancing, masking everywhere in those facilities. So as I do part of my job, my daytime job, being able to see and spend time with people who are in facilities, we've been masking a lot more. And so that's one of those things that we see is people are following. And so it's really, and we're seeing, I think, a little bit more masking in the public again.
Yeah,
right?
I think
Is that what
so.
you were thinking?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We are
Right.
seeing a little more masking in the public, and it's up. If you're going to go into a large crowd and you really want to protect yourself, and wear a mask.
Right.
Keep your social distance. Practice the things we were practicing 2 years ago. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm faithfully in doing all of those things, but I do try to keep that in mind, to try to stay away from the COVID. And I'll knock on wood, since COVID has come out, I've been COVID free. So maybe I just jinxed myself. But, and then there was I guess about 4 to 6 weeks ago, I was feeling really bad. Thought I had the COVID, never ran fever, but I took tests every other day and was negative. But I did stay away from work and, tried to limit my being around other people, contact with other people. So it's just something we're going to be living with until they come up with some type of cure or a vaccine that we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right, makes it go away. Yeah, I will even tell you, I know 2 examples of couples, a husband and wife, a boyfriend and girlfriend, where one of them got it and the second one thought, well, I should have gotten it already, so I'm okay. I can be around them. The answer is no to that. Both of them caught it.
Right.
And both of them had some issues with not only the sinus congestion and the cold-like symptoms and the fever, but the tiredness and the weakness and the lethargy that comes with that, and trying to do day-to-day things,
Right.
especially in this heat.
Right. We see the numbers going up. Last week we had 508 And then since the beginning of this week, we've had 372 cases, which is a little less than last week. Now you got to remember the last week numbers include the July 4th
July 4th
weekend
holiday,
numbers
right?
and everything. But so the good thing is that we're seeing, we're not seeing the numbers of admittances into the hospital.
Right. Less
But I
hospital
will
admissions.
say this past week, we had two patients in the hospital that were in the ICU and two on a vent, which we hadn't seen in a while.
Right.
Okay.
We had
Now,
one a few weeks ago, but this is two
yeah,
right now.
and what I want to reiterate to the public is that these people may go into the hospital with something else, and then when they're in the hospital they get tested,
Right.
and then they say, "Oh, you have the COVID." They wouldn't even know it,
Right.
and then so they're in the hospital and they're listed as having COVID. So if they're going through some other procedure or some other event, they could have come in as a car accident. They're going to test them for COVID. And if they end up in the ICU or an event, then they're considered as having COVID and being in the hospital.
Right. And they're not
So
getting that from the hospital. They've probably had that when they came in.
that's correct.
Yeah,
That's
because
correct.
of all of the guidelines that they use and
That's
all the
correct.
restrictions. And that.
So, we do keep in touch with the state on a weekly basis. Our public health emergency coordinator with the Department of Health, we in touch with her once a week, and we also speak to the regional medical director once a week to find out, what we should be doing.
One of those things that we know, and we appreciate the updates on COVID, but we also want to make sure that we're as well prepared as we can be for hurricane season.
Yeah, we're approaching that time of the year, the peak of the hurricane season. Usually, the August September time is when we have our most hurricanes that hit our coastline. So, people should still be preparing, getting their kits together, cleaning up around the house. Maybe trying to remembering how they're going to secure their outdoor furnitures and stuff like that, and just kind of be prepared. I gave a presentation last week. One of the things I asked people to do is sit down and think about what happened during Hurricane Ida and how did it affect you, and
Oof.
what can you do different to make it easier for you to either evacuate, because of a storm, or to make it easier for you when you return, so that you have what you need to take care of your situation when you return from a storm. So take that 10 or 15 minutes to just think about it and say, we didn't have any tarps last year after the storm. Well, maybe you want to go out and purchase 2 or 3 tarps and keep them somewhere else. Okay.
6.
Maybe your generator didn't work right when you first pulled it out and tried to use it. Now's the time to pull it out, start it up, test it out, change the spark plug, clean the oil filter, make sure it has fresh fuel in it if you need it, and run it. And then also put it under a load so that you know that the generator portion of the generator is actually working. So take a few minutes just to sit down and say, okay, what happened to me last year during Hurricane Ida, and how can I prepare myself better?
So I have several thoughts, Earl. The first is, if you're securing your outdoor furniture, I'm thinking about the people who have to secure their outdoor house.
Well, there's a lot of them
A lot of outdoor houses.
well, we still have a lot of houses right now that need repair and that are waiting
Right.
on, money, from their insurance companies and are waiting on contractors. So make sure that your house will be sturdy enough and secure enough to withstand any type of tropical system that affects us.
Right. The second thought was getting your stuff together. Were you were you in my car Tuesday? I went and got spark plugs, one for my, interestingly enough, my generator and my weed eater use the same spark plug. So I went and got extra spark plugs for that. And so I got gas for the generator. And so it's ironic that you say that today, because 2 days ago, that's what I was doing. I was checking off my list of getting those things.
A lot of us have gas cans left over from last year. If you had generators, you can go and fill those gas cans up now. I know the price of fuel is high, but in the event we have a storm, you're going to need the gas.
Right.
Put a stabilizer in it so that it'll stay fresh. And then if we don't have any storms or you don't have to use your generator, use the fuel in your vehicle.
It's a good recommendation. You can just siphon some of that out.
Yeah, well, be careful doing it, but
Yeah, yeah.
pour it into your gas tank so that you can use it. I mean, with the price of fuel, you really can't afford for it to go bad and you can't use it.
And one of those things that we typically tell people is to go and fill your tank. So fill both of them.
Right.
If you can do that, fill them both.
I mean, we
And be
saw how
prepared.
hard it was to get fuel.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's something that people should be prepared for.
Let's talk a little bit about what people can do in their preparation for reporting when we have people that may need help or special needs individuals.
Yeah, at the present time, if you have a special need, if you have a medical special need or some type of transportation issue, you can call the Council on Aging in Terrebonne and register that you have a special need. And then in the event of a storm, they will call you and ask you, are you still in need of transportation or some assistance? And then you will be triaged by the Louisiana Department of Health. And then if if they feel like you need to go to a medical special needs shelter, you will be transported there. If not, if they think you can go to a general population shelter, the parish will pick you up, put you on transportation, and go to our point-to-point shelter in Monroe, and you will be taken care of in Monroe.
And so it's multiple layers, and there's a triage system to determine what the need is and where you can best be served. I know for people that are a little more immobile, for people that maybe are bedbound, we're talking about home health and hospice patients, that we need to make sure we have a really good plan for those medically compromised people.
Right. And the other thing I'd like to express to people that if you're on oxygen, if you have an oxygen generator that requires electricity, or if you're on bottled oxygen, please get extra bottles, before the storm or now, to make sure that you have a supply of oxygen. And then if you're on a oxygen concentrator, you need to make sure you have some way that you can plug that in and have some type of electricity. They make these small generators, they're not that expensive, that you could just use on the outside. You'll have to run an extension cord. You can't put that generator on inside your house, but at least you could plug in your oxygen generator, concentrator,
Right.
so that you'll have the oxygen. So we experienced a lot of that during Ida.
And that's one of those things that you ask people to think about. Somebody who was on oxygen last year for Ida, they know what some of those concerns are. Let's have a better plan for it this year for wherever you're going to be.
That's correct.
Have that wherever you're going to be. Well, Earl, one of those things we hope you're not going to be is at the EOC. We don't want you to be there because we don't want to have any named storms come and hit us this year.
Well, if we have to, we're prepared.
Y'all are very well prepared. Thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank
Earl.
you, Keith.
All right, guys, and that'll do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more Bayou time when we continue.